Hello, this is Music Tech Help Guy, and welcome to episode 9 of my Pro Tools 11 video tutorial series. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the edit modes, and in the previous videos, we took a look at the edit tools, so you should have a pretty good idea of what most of the edit tools do by now. The difference between the edit tools and the edit modes is that the edit modes actually affect they're not specific editing tools like the tools are, but they affect how the tools do their job. Do they snap to the grid? Do they not snap to the grid like with slip mode? Can you spot things to a specific location, or can you shuffle different clips in a series? So that's what the edit tools, the edit modes do. They affect how the edit tools do their job. Now, a couple little quick things. You can press the tilde key, which is just to the left of the 1 key on the number row, to quickly cycle between these. And there's also another grid mode, the hidden under grid mode. If you just click on it, or you click and hold, you can choose between an absolute grid and a relative grid. So there's really 5 different modes. All right. So what we're going to do first is we're going to edit these guitars because we only have half of a take here. We need to have a full take that repeats over in this area. So this is guitar 1 and 2. They're just panned hard left and hard right. Everything in red is live drums. The green on the top is a lead vocal track, but all of that's muted. We'll come back to that in a moment. So this is what we've got so far. And then the take ends, so we need to double copy that take over. Now, the way we can do this, the way I showed you guys how to do this in a previous episode, is to select your absolute grid mode, which is the blue one. Use your selector tool. Make sure that your grid is set to a bar, and make sure the grid is actually turned on. Drag over the whole section that needs to be duplicated, and you can hit Command C, and then hit Command V to paste. Now, you can only copy and paste this way 1 track at a time, so me trying to do that with 2 tracks is not something you can really do. You can do that, but the problem with doing it this way is that you're going to have to, let me just zoom in a bit here. What you're going to have to do is you're still going to have to come in here and at the edit point sort of move the edit point around so you can get the edit before the transient rather than after the transient. Which is fine if you do it that way. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. There's just other ways to do it, and I want to show you guys other ways to do it. So another way to do it would be to select that same range with your grid mode and switch over to the separation grabber tool. Hold Option while you drag it, and it'll actually duplicate both of them. So that's the way you can do both at the same time. But still, you're going to have to go through that same issue of going in there and cleaning up the edit and fine-tuning that edit point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the relative grid mode. Now, before I even try to do this as relative grid, let me just explain what the difference between relative and absolute grid is, because a lot of people don't really get this. So I'm just going to copy a little piece of audio out here just to demonstrate. When you are in the absolute grid mode, let's say we have a clip like this that's not directly on the grid line. Right now our grid is set to a quarter note, but this will come into effect no matter what your grid's set to. So now it's set to a quarter note. I can move a clip off of the grid with slip mode, but if I click on the absolute grid mode and grab this and move it around, it's not going to snap to its original location. It's only going to snap to the grid lines. So this is a way to move a clip back onto the grid if that's indeed what you want to do. There are situations where you may not want the audio directly edited to the grid. So what you can do is use relative grid instead, and it will maintain its relative location. So instead of snapping to the next grid line like absolute grid does, relative grid snaps by the grid value. So my grid value is a quarter note, so this thing is moving at a quarter note's pace or length, but it's still maintaining its relative position on each beat. So this can be helpful for situations like I'm just going to show you. Well, what I'm going to show you right now. So what I don't want to do is I do not want to accidentally chop off this waveform right here at the grid line, because the guitar chord sort of comes in slightly before the grid line. What I also don't want to do is when we get to that edit point at measure 10, I don't want to cut this one off either. I want to edit a little bit before the grid line. So you always edit a little bit before the transient. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this slightly before the grid line using slip mode, go all the way up to measure 10, and at measure 10, that point where we want to edit it out, I'm going to select just before the grid line. Now, they're not exact locations, but because I did it that way, I can go grab my relative grid mode, grab my separation grabber tool, hold Option, and duplicate this. And instead of it duplicating and snapping directly to the grid, it duplicated it and moved everything at its relative position. So these edits have maintained their relative position on the grid. And yes, I'm still going to have to come in here and do some little fine-tuning of the edits here just to sort of clean this up a bit. Add fades. And I'm probably going to have to do the same to the end as well. Add a little fade there. And also to the beginning. I just like to do a nice little heads and tails edit just to keep everything nice and clean and not to have any extraneous noise in there. There we go. And now this should sound like a nice perfect take, a nice double take. We double the length of this whole section. All right. What I am going to do is I'm going to render these as new files. So remember, if you just hold Shift and click on all of the clips that you want to render into a new file or consolidate, you can consolidate the clips by pressing Shift Option 3 or Shift Alt 3 on a PC. There we go. While I have the guitar still up, let me show you what shuffle mode does, because slip and grid are pretty self-explanatory. We've basically been using them all along. Actually, one little quick thing about grid and slip mode before we jump away from those is if you select grid mode and hold Shift, you can actually hold Shift. After selecting grid mode, you can actually select a different edit mode other than just grid mode by itself, which actually lets you use two edit modes at once. But it always has to be grid mode and something else. It can't be slip and spot or slip and shuffle. It has to be grid and something else. So grid and slip is actually really useful because, again, you hold Shift and then click slip, because you can drag and edit normally in grid mode, but then if you hold Command while you're editing, it'll toggle back to slip mode. It'll be probably Control on a PC. The only thing I've noticed is that when I hold Command first, then click, I get this little menu, which I don't want. But if you hold Shift and Command at the same time, it'll sort of override that. So the only problem is it's like sort of making a selection. The holding Shift and Command makes a selection, so you can't just like click somewhere, because it'll actually make a selection from wherever you are up here. So you kind of just have to click first and then hold Command to engage slip mode. All right, let's talk about shuffle mode. Now, shuffle mode allows us to take different clips in a series and reorder them. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set my grid mode or my grid value back to a whole bar. And what I'm going to do is go to measure 10 over here, and I'm going to create a little bit of a variation in the guitar part by shuffling up a few of these guitar clips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over measure 11, hit B to separate, or Command E, depending on whether you have key focus on or not. And I'm going to separate measure 12 from measure 13. So what I've got here is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Normally, if I wanted to take this and put it in place of this, take 3 and put it in place of 2, what I would have to do is grab this, pull it out, move this one over, then pull this one back in. That's the way I showed you guys how to do it before. But with shuffle mode, you can reorder clips in a series. So I can take the third clip, move it over here, and it automatically bumps the second clip over. Or I can take the second clip and make the third clip be bumped over. So you can do it either way, from the left or from the right. So what I'm going to do, just to have a little bit of variation, is I'm going to pull this third clip and reorder it with the second clip. So now I have 1, 3, 2, 4 instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is probably not the best choice for like an edit point here. It doesn't quite sound right. So let me use slip mode and come in here and try to find maybe a different note in there, a different chord that sounds a little bit better. I mean, that sounds okay. Let's just try to maybe find something different here. This sort of gives you sort of creative freedom to come in here and alter your parts. Now, let's go the opposite way. Let's go this way. Let's go all the way up here. Yeah, that's a lot better. We'll do that. I'm going to drag over all these edits. I'm going to hit F as long as you have your key focus mode on. F is going to add a quick little fade to all of those edit points. Let's see what our altered part sounds like. So we were able to create a little bit of a variation there without really having the guitar player go back and replay anything. We're just altering his original idea to just make it different the second time around. All right, so let's pull this up. I'm going to hold Option to set all these to the same track height. And let's pull up these vocals. Now, I've got a lead vocal track here and then two effects tracks. I have a reverb track and sort of a chorusy doubling track. If you don't know how to use aux tracks and sends yet for time-based effects, don't worry about it. It's not going to affect the editing whatsoever. It's just that this vocal recording is of me singing, and I am not a very good singer, so I need all the help I can get. So, go easy on me. So this is what the vocals sound like with the guitar and everything in there.
After all this time, you keep setting fire. You keep setting fire below me. After all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me. You keep tearing me apart. Push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me. After all I need your fire below me.
Okay. There's basically four phrases. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the fourth phrase, the high note, actually the fourth and the second phrase are the same lyrics, just two different takes.
After all this time, I can live without you.
So this whole section here, which says time, can't live without you.
Time, I can live without you.
I don't really like the way that one turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag over it and just hit delete. And what I'm going to do is find the exact location of time, can't live without you in the second phrase, and I'm going to copy and paste it over because I like this one a little bit better.
After all this time, I can live without you.
Yeah, I like that one better. Neither of them are really that great, but this one's a little bit better sounding. So with slip mode, I'm going to find the specific line.
Time, I can live without you. Time,
And now that I've got it selected, I can use my relative grid mode to bump this over. So I'm just going to hold Option. That's not what I wanted. Oh, I got to use the, that's right, I got to use the separation grabber tool. My bad. Let's go back in there and select that again.
After all this time, I can live without you. Time,
All right. So now with my separation grabber tool, I'm going to hold Option, grab this out. And again, I'm doing it wrong again. I need to go to relative grid, pull this over, and I can snap it right in place, and it maintains its relative location on the grid, so it's not off time with the other take. Again, do some little cleanups here with it. Let's clean up the other end. Let's see what that sounds like.
You're all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me.
Now, one last thing I like to do with vocals is I like to do a heads and tails edit on basically all the beginnings of phrases and ends of phrases. Get rid of a lot of like the really heavy breathing, like this. Actually, that one's not too bad. I get rid of that. Again, you can just press F and add quick fades to all these, but the fade is so short that it just doesn't sound right to me. So I'd rather just do it this way. Here's another one. I breathe through my teeth all the time when I sing, so I need to get rid of that sound. Here's the next one.
You keep
Sometimes you can, edit too close and not realize you're editing too close, and then before you know it sounds choppy.
You keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me.
There we go. And one right at the end. And actually, I think there was one more mouth breathing or teeth breathing part. Actually, it was right here. Yeah. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, let's trim that up. Put a nice little fade in there. All right, let's see what that sounds like. So I'm going to listen to the whole thing by itself.
After all this time, you keep setting fire. You keep setting fire below me. After all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me. You keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me. After all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me.
There we go. If we want to, we could render these into a new clip, just like we did before. Shift Option 3. Let's see what this sounds like with the whole song in there.
After all this time, you keep setting fire. You keep setting fire below me. After all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me. You keep tearing me apart, push your kiss straight through my chest. I live in fear of the fire below me. After all this time, I can't live without you. I need your fire below me.
Okay, so the last edit mode is spot mode. What spot mode does is it lets you click on a clip and then type in specifically where you want that clip to go. So the problem with spot mode is that it puts the beginning of the clip wherever you want it to go. So what I'm going to do is, so all of these sort of maintain their same location, is I'm going to re-render all of these files down to the very first measure of the project. And what that's going to do is make sure that all of them are snapped to a bar line. So let's say this is the chorus of our song, and I wrote the chorus first, recorded the chorus first, but the chorus doesn't need to kick in until, say, measure 25. We want a verse to be in here instead. You could drag each one over individually if you want, but you can use spot mode to click on a clip, click on it with grabber mode, and type in a specific location. Now, right now, our time scale is set to time code, which is hours, minutes, seconds, and frames. We want to use bars and beats, which is our bars, beats, and ticks. So if I want to go to measure 25, all I have to do is type in 25 and hit enter. and that clip will jump right over to measure 25. Now, I believe you can actually do this as a group. If you turn on your all group, it puts every track in your session in a group. And by the way, if you don't see your groups, you can press this little arrow key here to hide and show them. Click on it. Let's make everything go to measure 25, and there we go. Now we have all this extra room here to write in our verse. Now, the thing about spot mode that I can't really go over now, just because we're not ready for it yet, is working with video and working in post-production. Because one of the most useful things about spot mode is its ability to spot things to a time code value. Now, imagine yourself working on a video project where you have to add in sound effects, like hundreds of sound effects. Rather than trying to drag each sound effect in one by one and match them up with the action on screen, you can actually just make a list with a spot sheet or a cue sheet to write down the specific time code values for each of the events that are happening in the scene, and then you can click on each clip and spot it to a very specific location. When we're dealing with musical projects, measure 25 is not very hard to find, but if you're working in a post-production project and you're looking for, hour 0, 5 minutes, 35 seconds, and 14 frames, that's a very specific location, and you can really only spot things to those precise of locations. So that's really the other function of spot mode, and really the true reason why it's there is not for musical projects, but for post projects. We'll talk about working with video and using spot mode a bit more much later down the road. All right, so I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.